Hi, welcome to the Yarn and Yarns YouTube channel. My name is Angela and all of the places you can find me online should be linked in the description box just down below this video. I'm most active on Instagram where you'll find me as both Rainbow Ange and Yarn and Yarns. And here on the channel you'll find me chatting about my adventures in knitting and spinning and crochet. Thank you so much for joining me this week, whether you have been here many times before or perhaps it's your first time. I really do appreciate your company. It never ceases to amaze me every week when I put up the videos that there are people out there who want to spend time out of their busy weeks to listen to me prattle on about what I am making, and for that I am sincerely grateful. It's nice to know that I'm not alone sat here chatting at my phone. I had hoped to be recording out and about today, but the weather this morning conspired against me. I took all of my stuff out. I was hoping to test out the new microphone that I had been able to purchase thanks to the lovely viewers here who were able to donate on my coffee donations page. I raised enough to purchase a external microphone, and I took everything out with me this morning. I went down to the beach, had all of my stuff, and it started to rain. And you know me, there are many crazy things that I'm happy to do for you lovely folks out there. But sitting on the beach in the rain under my umbrella, holding up my knitting is probably one step too far on the crazy scale, even for me. But of course, Murphy's Law and all that, I have come back home and now the sun is shining. You couldn't make it up. It's, yeah, just bad timing on my part. See, the thought of packing everything up again, and now that I've got it out on the sofa here beside me to show, and taking it all out again, just, yeah, it's not going to happen. So I'm sorry about that, because I was actually looking forward to recording down on the beach today, but it was not meant to be. All of the usual segments to show you today. So I've got some knitting, some crochet and some spinning. I don't have tons of progress on a lot of projects because I've been trying to concentrate on one or two. So I thought I'd also chat to you a little bit about my September plans, including a couple of make-alongs that I'm going to be hosting over on my Ravelry group. And the Ravelry group is a brand new venture. I started it up last week. There's not tons going on over there at the moment. I need to kind of pretty it up and tidy it up. But thank you so much to people who have already popped over and joined. I'll chat a little bit more about the make-alongs in the second part of this video. But for now, I'm going to crack on and show you the things that I've been working on. Start with crochet this week, and if you watched last week, it will be no surprise to you that my main focus in terms of my crochet making has been the test crochet that I am doing for the lovely Sarah, who is older sign both on Ravelry and Instagram. When I entered into the test crochet, Sarah said that it would be fine to share progress on the shawl as we made it, but then she has asked that we don't show the finished object until the pattern is released. I haven't quite finished the shawl, but I'm literally 2 or 3 rows away from finishing. So if I showed it now, it would literally be showing you the finished thing. So out of respect for the test crochet, I won't be showing you the shawl as such, but I have bundled it up so you can see that I've done a lot of work on this. And I actually popped a picture of the shawl like this up on Instagram yesterday and called it my shawl sausage because it's all wrapped up a bit like a sausage roll. So and I had a few people giggle over that, so feel free to use the hashtag sausage shawl if you like over on Instagram. So as you can see, I've made quite a lot of progress. There's great big bundle of crochet here, and I've really enjoyed working on this shawl, and I'm looking forward to being able to show you the finished object. I have been using, I can show you the yarn. So the yarn I've been using is the Queensland collection, the Perth line. It's a wool nylon blend, so I have it in the shop in the sort of sock range, but I often use sock yarns for other projects. You don't just have to use them for socks. Any 4-ply project will generally do. This is the Great Sandy colourway, so it's colourway 105, and as you can see, it's lots of lovely sort of browns and oranges, which are completely in my wheelhouse colour-wise. I just love this colourway so much, and I think it's part of the reason that I have been really enjoying working on this project. I have mentioned many times before that I love crochet, but crochet doesn't always love me. However, this project has reminded me that as long as I am sensible and do a little bit every day, I can actually do a little bit more than I think. So that's been a nice reminder that I don't have to kind of shy away from crochet as long as I'm careful. So yeah, almost finished. I only have, as you can see, a little bit of yarn left. I've been pulling from the centre of this yarn, which I don't usually do. Because of the way the yarn was wrapped, I figured if I tried to take the ball band off and rewind it, I'd probably get into a bit of a mess with sort of chunks of yarn falling off and knotting up. So I decided just to sort of keep the ball band on and pull from the centre, and it's worked pretty well. There's been a couple of times where, particularly at the start of the yarn, where it's all packed in really tightly, where I tried to pull out the yarn and a big clump came out. But crochet is pretty yarn hungry, so that wasn't really a problem. I was able to work through the clumps that sort of came out pretty quickly without getting in too much mess. So yeah, I think I should have enough yarn left to, well, I've definitely got enough yarn left to finish the crocheting. The pattern also has an option for tassels for the corners, and if I've got enough yarn left, I think I will definitely add on the tassels. So fingers crossed I will. Can't wait to show you that as a finished object. The deadline for the test crochet is in a couple of days' time, so I am assuming that the pattern release will probably be in the not too distant future, but I will show you the finished object and chat more about that when the pattern is released. The design is called Effa Healed, and I'll pop that on the screen. There'll be a link to my project page below, and obviously once the pattern's released, that will have all the links to where you can purchase the pattern, etc, etc, if you fancy making one for yourself. And if you enjoy crochet and you want something that's fairly simple with a little bit of a sort of interesting pattern every now and then, I can highly recommend this one. I think we'll move on to spinning next. I have a few finished spins to show you this week. The first is a spin that I completed on my drop spindle. I showed you this last week as singles, so I'm not sure if it was still on the spindle or if I'd wound it off, but it's this lovely sort of green sample of yarn from a bundle that I picked up at Wonderwall this year from Woolly Knits. So they had an offer on where you could buy several bags of sort of samples and mill ends for only a few pounds. So this was one of the samples in there. The fibre is not, as you would imagine from mill ends, the best quality. It is lovely in parts, but there are other parts where it's sort of a bit compressed and a bit difficult to draft out. So these yarns are not turning out to be sort of the most even yarns I've ever spun, but I'm enjoying them. The colours are beautiful, and this is going to hopefully head into my Helix shawl, which is a lovely pattern by Stephen West, and I'm knitting mine in lots of samples of handspun. So yeah, hopefully I will have enough here to get a row or two into my Helix from this. I just did a 2-ply, so I finished spinning it, then wound it off into a centre pull ball, and then plied from each end of that ball to make this 2-ply yarn. After I finished that, I decided to go on my drop spindle back to a project that I started in Tour de Fleece earlier on this year. If you watched any of my Tour de Fleece videos, you will remember, hopefully, that I was spinning up fibre from Hilltop Cloud, which is a lovely company based here in Wales. And the lovely dyer Kate has some fantastic bases and some fantastic colours. So if you enjoy spinning, I can highly recommend the Hilltop Cloud web shop. If you want to hop on over there, she's usually got beautiful things in stock. And I had purchased a gradient pack in her Cambrian base, which is a mix of Blueface Leicester and Welsh Mule. And I also had some natural in the same base, so I decided to spin up the gradient and then ply it together with the natural colourway to make a mild yarn. and I managed to complete 3 of the colours from the 5 colour gradient, and then I ran out of natural. What happened is I had been unintentionally spinning the natural yarn slightly thicker than I had the dyed yarn. So the natural yarn I used up a lot quicker, and I needed to order some more, and it didn't come till the very end of Tour de Fleece, so I wasn't able to finish my gradient. So I thought it was high time that I got back to that. So I managed to finish one of the 2 colourways that I had left. This is a lovely sort of burgundy deep red colour. So I spun up the natural yarn on my drop spindle, and then I plied it on my wheel, and yeah, this is the resulting yarn. I have 3 other colourways of this already finished, but I've left them upstairs, so I don't have them to show you. I've got one more colour in the dyed fibre that's already spun up, waiting to be plied together with some natural. So this week I'm going to try and spin up the rest of the natural fibre that I have, and get that gradient complete. I've got a couple of potential ideas as to what I'm going to do with my mild gradient once it's finished. I think it will come down to my meterage at the end of the day as to what I decide to go with. But hopefully in the not too distant future, I will be sharing my plans for this hand spun yarn. And then finally on my wheel this week, I have taken a little break from the Ashford fibre that I showed you last week. I wasn't able to spin at the beginning of last week at all because of the pain that I've been having in my back. But as the week went on, I started to feel a little bit better, and I was able to sit on my wheel for sort of 10-15 minutes at a time and do a little bit of spinning. But as I mentioned last week, the Ashford fibre requires me to treadle quite a lot to get enough twist into the yarn to keep it together. So I decided instead to pull out another bump from the mill ends pack from Woolly Nets and just do a little bit of spinning just to keep myself going, to keep my hands in practice, and without putting sort of too much pressure on my legs and back in terms of needing to treadle. So I spun up this fibre, which is a gorgeous purple colour, and I ended up chain plying this just to practice a bit of chain plying, because I haven't done that for a few spins. Some of this, I kind of have mixed feelings about this yarn. Again, because the fibre was mill ends, some of the bits were difficult to draft and a little bit compressed. So there are definitely some really thick and thin spots, but where the yarn has spun nicely, it's also come together like really nicely and really evenly. So there are some beautiful spots in this yarn, but then there are also a couple of bits where it's pretty tragic in terms of consistency. But yeah, overall, I'm kind of pleased with that. And I think, again, this nice rich purple will look good in my Helix shawl. I don't think I've got any sort of colours in the purple ranges in that shawl yet. So I need to pull that shawl out and see which of the little samples that I've spun up recently are going to fit in with that. So that will be on the agenda for the not too distant future. And then, of course, finally on to knitting. I have got a work in progress and a couple of finished objects to show you for knitting this week. So my first finished object has been seen on the videos before if you have watched. All I had to do was weave in the ends and kind of block and finish off this lovely hat, which is a hat that I made from my hand spun yarn, and it's the rice slip pattern by Woolly Wormhead. This fibre was this year's Tour de Fleece colourway from Hilltop Cloud, and as you can see, it's almost kind of created a sort of striping effect. It's absolutely beautiful yarn, and I really enjoyed knitting this pattern. I finished it off with a button that I purchased. This is kind of like a fake placket. You knit the brim of the hat first and you make it longer than you need, and then you overlap it, and then you put on just like a little sort of fake button type detail just as an added extra for the pattern. And I picked this up from Sedbergh Mill. No. Fairfield Mill, which is just outside of Sedbergh, when I was on my holiday. And this is from Laura's Loom, one of the studios inside the mill. And yeah, it's a nice kind of woven button, so it's a bit of woven fabric that she's put onto one of those sort of make your own badges. So I've put that on there for now. I think it looks quite nice as a detail on there. There's enough contrast to show up against the colours on the button band, but it's kind of in keeping with the sort of hand spun, handmade look. So yeah, I'm really pleased with that finished object. Nice to have that finished. At some point this week, I'll try and take some nice pictures of the finished object for my Ravelry page. The second finished object that I have for you was almost finished last week, so again, this one won't be any surprise. It's my Zauber ball socks. So here we have, there we go, they're on my sock blockers. I've got 1 and 2. I've already showed these off on Instagram, so if you follow me over there, then you will have already seen these. I think last week when I showed these, I had a little bit of the second foot left to do and to go back and put in the heel. So these are all done. These have really reignited my sock mojo. I think the fun colours and I think the fun colours really helped. I've got a few other sock whips in my pile of whips to go through. A lot of those are pattern socks, but I think I need to just remind myself that as much as I enjoy a pattern sock every now and then, it really is a vanilla sock that I just love. The round and round kind of easy knitting, watching the beautiful colours from different dyed yarns grow. That's really what I like about sock knitting, and I know it's not the most interesting. A vanilla sock is definitely not, you know, as interesting to see as, you know, a fun pattern sock, but that's just really where my heart lies when it comes to sock knitting. So I need to remind myself of that when I embark on sort of fancy socks. So yeah, Zauber ball, I won't say too much more about that. I talked a lot about the yarn and the needles and everything in the last episode, so I won't bore you all with those details again. Lastly, on to my work in progress, and I'm getting a little bit distracted because I think my decision not to try and get back to the beach again was justified as it started to rain again. I guess it's just going to be one of those days. Anyway, I am going to show you my drifter shawl. So the drifter is a pattern by Tammy Gore, and you'll find it over on Ravelry, and I can highly recommend this pattern. This has been an absolute joy to work on, and I am so close to being finished. I think I've got 2 sections left to do. So this project has seen the majority of my knitting time this week, and it's grown loads since I last showed it. So when I last showed the project, I had started this again as one of my holiday knitting projects. So I'd knit here, and I had just started the first slip stitch section of the shawl, where I was bringing in the secondary colour in a more dominant way. The main colour is this beautiful yarn that was dyed and sent to me by my lovely friend Jeanette. I love this colourway so much. These browns with these gorgeous sort of specks of raspberry and also some deeper browns. It's just been such a joy to work on this project. And then the orange yarn is a colour from Easy Knits, again sent to me by Jeanette, and it's the Firecrackle or the Leaf Crackle colourway. Hang on, let me just remind myself quickly if I can. Leaf Crackle. So this is the Leaf Crackle on their Cherish base, which is 80-10-10 superwash merino cashmere nylon. So when I last showed it to you, we were somewhere back here. I can't remember exactly where. Actually, we might have just put in the first solid stripe when I last showed it to you. So I think that was where we were. And as you can see, it's grown massively. So I think this week I've knit from somewhere around here all the way out to here. And I just love this project so much. The yarn combination and the pattern, yeah, lovely, absolutely gorgeous. As I say, I'm so close to being finished. I do have one small issue though. I have got to a point where I've got to put in one more stripe of the main colour, but I've run out of the main colour of yarn. So I've got a couple of different options. I went through my yarn stash. I pulled out this mini from by Miranda May, who is one of our local indie dyers here. and I had this mini in a set that I bought from her. This is actually her Smelly Cat colourway, and it doesn't have the raspberries in it, but it does have the browns and the deep browns, so I think it's a reasonable match for the colour that Jeanette sent me, which doesn't have a sort of colourway name. Not 100% convinced on it. It is a little bit different, and I'm not sure if it's going to look a little bit odd having sort of one slightly different stripe towards the end of the shawl. So I think what I'm going to do is pop it in. I think the final stripe is only about 10 rows, so I think I'm going to knit it in, and then if I don't like it, if I think it is too obvious, then I'll just rip it back out and finish the rest of the shawl in the orange colourway. But obviously if I think it looks okay, then I shall leave it in. So that's the plans for the next time that I work on the drifter shawl. Let me try and... I can't see what I'm showing you, but hopefully you get the idea, and I love this project so much. Yes. So that's everything in terms of what I've been working on this week. I thought I'd chat to you a little bit about my September plans. So I'm going to be having a couple of KALs over in the Ravelry group. The first one started yesterday, the 1st of September, and will run until the 1st of December. And I'm hosting it jointly with Ellie, who is Curio Yarns, and you'll find her on YouTube here, Ravelry, and she has a lovely Etsy shop. And we're going to be knitting a garment which is the Mount Pleasant by Megan Nodecker, and this garment's been on my radar and in my Ravelry queue for ages. So we decided to host a KAL. Ellie saw the pattern and decided that she wanted to cast it on too. So I shall be casting that on as soon as my yarn arrives. I've actually ordered some yarn from Ellie from her lovely Etsy shop, and I'm just waiting for it to arrive, and then that's going to go on the needles. I'm going to pop a picture of the Mount Pleasant on the video here. And it is a lovely sort of cropped short sleeve top, and I think it's fairly inclusive in terms of sizes. The largest size it goes up to is 60, I believe. I'm doing this off the top of my head, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but there'll be a link down below so you can pop over and get all the details. But for the smallest few sizes, you need 2 skeins of 4-ply yarn, 100 grams, and for the sort of last few sizes you need 3. So it's not too bad in terms of expenditure. If you wanted to join in the KAL, you are more than welcome. You don't have to knit the Mount Pleasant. You could knit or crochet. I'm saying knit, but crochet is more than welcome. You could knit or crochet a top that's similar. So 4-ply, either cropped or short sleeve, summer tee, something like that. That's only going to take a few skeins of yarn. Then you are more than welcome to join in the KAL. There is a thread over on my group. There's also one on Ellie's group. I'm going to be putting up a prize. I think Ellie will be doing the same. I haven't decided what my prize will be yet, but hopefully I'll sort that out by the time I next record to let you know. But yes, you're all more than welcome. A 4-ply t-shirt or crop top. Yeah, come along, join in, knit or crochet. You'll be more than welcome. Post your yarn choices and chatter away over on the Ravelry group. I know garment making isn't for everyone, so there's probably a lot of you out there who might be interested in joining a make along, but wouldn't perhaps join in the Mount Pleasant make along because garment making is just not something that you enjoy or want to do. So I've decided alongside that to host what will hopefully be a slightly more inclusive make along, and it's a make along which I'm hoping to partaking in a lot myself and use it as encouragement for myself, and it's going to be a whip along. So work on your whips, your works in progress, anything that you started and is in progress before the 1st of September counts. Any craft, knitting, crochet, spinning, needle felting, weaving, anything you like. I need to pop on over and get a Ravelry thread up for that. I'll have a chatter thread and a finished object thread for that one. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to try and work through, I've got a lot of whips. For anyone who's followed me here for a while, you know I like to cast on a lot of projects. And I'm at the point now where I'm close to finishing quite a few, and I'd really like just that final encouragement to get me over that last hurdle and get some of these projects off the needles. With that in mind, I've decided to change the way that I kind of approach my crafting for the end of the year. So up until this point, if you've been following me, you might remember that I've been trying to alternate between working on my oldest work in progress versus the next week where I work on anything that I like. And that has worked for me so far, and I've got some of my oldest projects off the needles. But over the last couple of weeks, I've been finding that a little bit too restrictive. And I think that's part of the reason why I lost my mojo a little bit the last couple of weeks, because I haven't really wanted to work on the projects that I feel like I should be working on. And I say should because this is a self-imposed thing, but I'd done really well in sort of keeping up with that sort of alternating approach. But I decided, you know what, it's starting to not work for me, so let's draw a line under that and work slightly differently for the rest of the year. So for the rest of the year, I'm actually going to set myself a monthly goals list. So for September, I'm using this lovely notebook that I got from Emma, who is Eldenwood Craft, and this was in our Knit Tea retreat goodie bag last year for the October retreat. And so I've made myself a little list in here. I've been using it to keep track of the projects that I've been working on each week. But now I've decided to do a September goals. So I've actually got 8 things on my list for September. I figured if I tried to set myself 8 goals a month, so that's kind of 2 a week roughly on average, and it's going to be a combination of finishing some projects, so finishing some things that are near completion, but then I thought I'd also put some other things on there as well, so allow myself to start new projects if I want to, but sort of keep the impetus going for finishing some things. So I've got on my list for September, I've got 4 things that I want to finish and 4 other things. So I want to finish the opal socks that I showed you last week. I want to finish my Canady shawl, my drifter shawl and my Helix shawl. So that's kind of one project to finish each week through the month. Now, some of these projects are closer to completion than others. So for instance, my opal socks are probably only going to take a couple of evenings to finish, and I may get those finished this week. My Canady shawl, which is going to be my focus for this week, is a lot further away from completion. It's close, but there's a lot more knitting to do. So I figured each week I'll try and focus on one project, and if I finish that project in the week, then I can move on to the next one. If I don't finish the project, then to save myself from feeling like I'm constantly only working on one thing, which just doesn't sit well with me. I know there are monogamous knitters out there, and I love you guys. I wish I was like you, but I'm not. So I think I'm going to have a weekly focus, and then if I finish the project in that week, all well and good. If I don't, then it can go back in my basket, and I'll come back to it later on in the month if I have time. So yeah, those are the 4 that I'm hoping to finish, or get close to finishing. As I said, there's a lot more work in my Canady. My drifter shawl has probably only got a few evenings of work left. The opal socks, 1 or 2 evenings. And then my Helix shawl, I'm not sure exactly how far away from completion I am on that one. I stopped working on that because I ran out of handspun yarn that I wanted to put in that. I didn't run out of handspun yarn because I do have a pile of it, but I ran out of yarn that I wanted to put into that shawl, if that makes any sense. Hopefully it does. So over the last couple of weeks, I've spun up a few more samples that are destined for that shawl. I'm not sure how close to completion that's going to get me. So yeah, that one's a bit more of an unknown. And then on my list of other things to do, I want to cast on my Mount Pleasant for the Mount Pleasant KAL. I want to cast on the cardigan that is meant to be for James for Christmas, and it's probably not going to be for Christmas now because it's a hell of a lot of work and I haven't started it yet. But I want to get it on the needles, so that's a goal for September. I also want to pick up some Tunisian crochet. That's a goal. A couple of my customers at the shop, for anyone who may not have joined me before, I run a bricks and mortar yarn shop. And each week I have groups in the shop, and we sit and we knit and we chat, and I give out help for anyone who wants it on their projects. And a couple of ladies have expressed interest in starting Tunisian crochet projects, and I have not done Tunisian crochet for the longest time, so I want to start a Tunisian crochet project just to brush up my skills, so that I can hopefully help them on their journey if they need it. And then the final thing is inspired by the lovely Lee of the Lou Lee podcast. She has started her Knit 1000 grams knit along challenge. And the past few years she's hosted this. The idea is to knit from your stash between September and March, which is traditionally when the Edinburgh Yarn Festival happens, although next year the announcement has come a little while ago that there won't be an Edinburgh Yarn Festival, but Lee is still going to host that challenge, and I'll be working on my whips. Whips are allowed, so I'm going to be using that as a way to also help me knit through my stash and get some of these whips off the needles. But I thought I would cast on a project specifically for this KAL. Lee often has a sock tube on the go, and basically she takes a skein of yarn or whatever and just casts it on, knits a big tube, and then once the knitting is finished, once the yarn is finished, back and cuts into the tube and makes several pairs of socks from it. And I have a beautiful sock blank that's been sitting in my stash for several years. I was lucky enough to win this on a podcast giveaway from the Jeanette of the Bookish Stitcher. I don't think Jeanette has recorded a video for ages, which is such a shame. I must go and check out her channel just in case I've accidentally unsubscribed from it and she is posting and I don't know. I participated in a make along and I won this gorgeous sock blank from Gales Arts, and it's a sort of hand painted sock yarn in lots of beautiful autumnal colours with these leaf prints on. And I've hoarded this for ages because I didn't want to use it, but you know, it's a shame for this to just be sitting in my stash and not being used. So I've decided that I'm going to knit a tube inspired by Lee, and then I'm going to cut it up and hopefully make at least 2 pairs of socks for myself. I will put in contrast heels and toes. But yeah, I thought this would be a fun one to work on as part of the Knit 1000 grams KAL hosted by Lou Lee. So yeah, hop on over to Lee's Ravelry group and YouTube channel if you're interested in joining along. As I say, the idea is just knit from stash and to try and knit through at least 1000 grams of your stash or whatever goal you set for yourself. And then finally, while I'm talking about KALs, the lovely Caroline, who is Colourful Creativity, is hosting a spin along. So after the end of Tour de Fleece, she decided that she wanted to help us keep up the impetus with our spinning, and the idea is basically to spin at least a braid of fibre, so I guess 100 grams of fibre each month between now and the start of the next Tour de Fleece. So last month my spin for the KAL was the lovely pink merino yarn, which I showed from start to finish in last week's video. And so for September, I have picked out another braid from my stash, and it's actually some fibre that Caroline gifted me. So it's this beautiful colour combination. It's braided up, but it's actually 4 different sort of stripes of fibre in these lovely, again, autumnal colourways. Can you tell now it's hit the 1st of September that I just want autumn to be here? I'm working in all of the autumn colourways. So yeah, I have decided that I'm going to spin this up for the make along, and I think I'm also hoping to include this spin in the Knit Tea Retreat make along. So the Knit Tea Retreat is coming up here in Cardiff in October, organised by the lovely Jenny and Zoe. I'll put links down below, and they're hosting a retreat make along, and the theme is just retreat. And I met Caroline at last year's Knit Tea Retreat, and we have become lovely friends since then, and she's gifted me this fibre, so I think that kind of fits in with the retreat themes, because the best thing about retreats is making new friends. I think I'm going to spin this up for a pair of hopefully striping fingerless mitts. I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to do that yet, whether I just spin through each of the colours and make 4 separate yarns and then just kind of make my own stripes as I go, or whether I break this down and spin a little bit of each colour and join it into one ball. I haven't decided yet. I've just kind of been thinking about the project. So yeah, that is my project for Caroline's spin along, and also hopefully for the Knit Tea Retreat make along as well. All of the KALs for September and hopefully finishing some of the things. Right, I think I have waffled on long enough. My timer says I'm up to close to 45 minutes, so I'm going to need to cut some of this down, because otherwise I won't be able to get it uploaded to YouTube. But hopefully I'll be able to. I usually am able to find plenty of waffle and me, you know, scratching my head and stuff to cut out. So hopefully I can get it down to a manageable file size. Thank you so much for joining me. I always love sitting down to chat with you all. Sorry the video's been a bit waffly and rambly this week, but hopefully you have enjoyed it nonetheless. I hope you were all able to have a wonderful week and get to do some of the things that you enjoy. And until next time, great big woolly hugs to you all. Bye for now.